She wants the exercise.
As authors of crime fiction, this is for all you guys, do you find that you have to more diligently outline your stories before you start writing so that you have your ending locked in? Or are you often going through something where you find out you kill your protagonist in the first chapter and then need to work it out through there?
I'm a big believer in not outlining. I was talking to some other crime writers yesterday, Reed Farrell Coleman, big fan of his, and he was saying, you know, he does an outline, and part of the reason there is that, you know, in having faith in your beliefs, it's also, I think, really important to have faith in your subconscious, your unconscious as a writer, and sort of, you know, if I'm writing a book and I don't know the ending, that makes it more exciting for me to write, and hopefully some of that not knowing is built into the reading experience as well. Similarly, when I get to that ending, there's a sort of, I can have that catharsis of like, oh wow, like this is amazing, but it works out. And pretty regularly, when I'm writing, things do work out that way. I mean, it's like, you know, there are some pieces that are coming together that maybe I don't realize as a writer in the first draft, but I see when I get to the end of the book in the same way that the reader does. And then in subsequent drafts, I can go sort of bump that up a little bit and make sure that all the pieces connect. But you know, there's something really exciting for me as a writer about finding that ending organically as I'm going through.
Yeah, I'm more along the line of not outlining as well. I actually, because I have contracts with my publisher, part of my obligation is to give my editor an outline. And so I'm forced to do something, and the outline is, I have to say, it's more like a 2-page synopsis. It's not really an outline. So I send that to her, and then she tells me things like, you know, don't bring in too much Oakland, or whatever. And then I start writing, and then I'm usually by page 2, I'm completely off the outline. So it just doesn't work for me to outline. I know some mystery writers, a lot of them who are very methodical and so plot driven that, you know, they'll have an outline, single space, 70 pages. And all they need to do to complete the book once they're done is, you know, fill in a few descriptive passages, essentially. I mean, they're so methodical about it. But I'm with Seth. I kind of, both in terms of the writing, I think my writing's much better if it's more spontaneous. If I'm interested, then I have a much better chance of interesting you. You know, if I'm bored with my own prose, it's a bad sign. And then as somebody who does this full time, I want to be interested by my writing. You know, there are days that I'm writing 6, 7, 8 hours, and I want to be interested and intrigued. So if I'm not, why, you know, I should get a decent job with the computer industry or something.
I was going to say, you know, it makes the daily writing job more exciting if you don't know what's going on always.
But I have developed a process now for myself that I think works very well for me, which is that I write the first draft that way, much more spontaneously, and then at the second draft, I will write an outline from that first draft. And the outline, because it's so graphic, it helps me make sure that I have followed up all of the details. And especially, I think, in crime writing, mystery writing, you've got red herrings, you've got, you know, different suspects, you've got clues that you're laying out. You need to make sure that you've put those in there, that they're dispersed in a way that makes sense, that is sort of organic, and that you haven't let a whole lot of ends drop by the end. So that actually works for me to at some point write the outline out, but it's usually after I have a whole draft.
Yeah, it's funny because usually we have 3 pantsers here. I mean, the joke is that it splits into people who outliners and people who fly by the seat of their pants. And usually there's one outliner on the panel. I mean, I actually did a tour with Simon Wood once, who does a 100-page color-coded outline of each book before he sits down to write it, because he used to be an engineer. Yeah. And, you know, and that's his process, and that works for him. I mean, for me, the only book that I tried to write that way was the second crime fiction novel that I wrote, and it's the only book I never sold. Because it felt like by the time I got down to actually writing of it, I was really tired of the story. I mean, it kind of felt like I was going through the motions, but I mean, it's a joke. I always have to do those synopses too. And, you know, it's such a farcical, I always argue against it. I'm like, you know, we all know that once I've written this book and we go back and read the synopsis, it's going to be like, wow, that would be a good book too. That's not the book that I wrote. It never is.
Yeah. What else?
How about you? You should answer.
Well, the only thing I will add, I'm on my 18th book and I've tried 18 things, so I'm no kind of expert. The one thing I did learn this time is that faith, which Seth has mentioned several times, interestingly, is a really important element of finishing a book and finishing a good book. And when I say faith, I mean the belief that your story will tell itself. And I forget it every time. Usually at the revision stage, I lose faith in my story because I see the errors. And what I've learned this time is that I need to know that things will resolve themselves. I can't tell you how, but I think our subconscious is smarter than we give it credit for. Lee Child famously says that he writes, I'm going to mess this up and my friends will correct me, but he has no idea who does it till halfway through, but he makes sure to seed his manuscript with a lot of odd possibilities. So then the second half of the book, he's tying up all the loose ends that he started. And that works for him. So. Question from you, sir?
I'm passing around the microphone.
All right. Who next?